Hi everybody, me again. Hello, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. So my name is Ellen. I work at Royal Holloway, University of London. I'm a Schools and Colleges Liaison Officer. So basically my job is to speak to students about university, what it involves, and all the different elements that come with it. Today's session is an introduction to study abroad and an introduction to a year in industry. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to turn my webcam off and start with a really brief presentation, and then the rest of the session is actually going to be a Q&A with our student ambassadors. So I have three lovely student ambassadors who you'll meet later, who will be able to answer your questions about anything related to study abroad, year in industry, or just student life in general. So we're going to get started, like I said, firstly with my quick presentation, and then we're going to go straight on to meeting our student ambassadors. If you do have questions while I'm speaking, my lovely colleague Jim is here. He is going to be manning the chat. We're going to test out the chat now and make sure that everybody can access it, but that is where you'll be inputting your questions throughout the session. And then myself, my student ambassadors, will be able to answer them later on, or Jim will be able to answer them in the chat, especially if they're kind of technical issues, and he'll hopefully get back to you. So let's get on with the presentation. First things first, hopefully I've been speaking to all of you out there and you can hear me. We're going to test out our chat function, so if you could just write yes or no in the chat to see if you can hear me, and we can keep going. So again, just a simple yes or no. You should find the chat down the right hand side of your screen depending on what device you are on. Fantastic, got lots of yeses, which is great. Perfect. Okay, great, we can move on. So today we're going to cover, we're going to start with studying abroad, and then we're going to cover year in industry, and then, as I've said, the rest of the session is going to be the student ambassador Q&A. Starting off with studying abroad. Now, studying abroad is a very kind of broad term, excuse the pun, and it really can mean a lot of different things. So I wanted to take it down to kind of the simplest definition and what it actually means, so we can look at what your options actually are going to be when it comes to studying abroad. So this is assuming that you are a UK-based student. Most of you on this call will be, although I will appreciate that some of you may be international students. But this situation is assuming that you are a UK student and you want to experience university study abroad. In that case, you have two kind of main general options. Your first one is, instead of applying to a UK university, you could apply to an overseas university and study for the entirety of your degree abroad. So obviously this has its pros and its cons. There'll be reasons why you may want to do this and reasons why you may not want to do this. Some universities throughout the world are much more expensive than universities in the UK. Some universities are much cheaper. One thing to note is that if you are going to be relying on student finance, so student loans from the UK government, these will not be applicable if you choose to study your entire degree at an overseas university, so you won't be able to obtain student loans from the UK government. But that is definitely an option for you, so keep it in mind if you're somebody who's maybe considering spending the whole of their degree abroad. Now, the other option, and maybe the one that you kind of associate most obviously with studying abroad, is applying to a UK university that offers you the chance to spend part of your degree studying abroad. And so that is the type that we're going to be talking about today, and that is what I'm going to mean when I refer to studying abroad. Now, another disclaimer here, I'm going to be talking very Royal Holloway specifically for the kind of duration of this study abroad section. The reason for that is because every single university will run their study abroad schemes differently. There's going to be nuances and small differences between every scheme that may not, they may not be in line with our Royal Holloway way of running it. They may be exactly the same as Royal Holloway, but I can't guarantee that, because in order to kind of have that kind of knowledge, it would take a long time to understand the rules of studying abroad at every single university in the UK. So I'm going to tell you what Royal Holloway does. Now, of course, even if you don't end up coming to Royal Holloway, or even if it ends up not being one of your choices, this can still be useful because it can give you an insight into the types of things that other universities might offer. So in terms of the studying abroad options for UK students that want to spend part of their year studying abroad, if you're at Royal Holloway, I've tried to kind of create this handy chart to explain it to you because it is quite a complicated selection of choices. One pathway that you can take is by doing an international summer school. Now, this is something that you may not think of. You may not think of studying abroad in your summer break, but is available at Royal Holloway as well as at other universities. And so this is where you would spend some of your summer break studying at a international university. The other kind that may be something that is what you immediately think of when you think of studying abroad is what's called an international exchange. I'm using this as kind of a catch-all term to include lots of destinations kind of all around the world. This would have previously been split into international versus EU, so European universities, with what was the Erasmus scheme. Which you may have heard of before. It was a way of students in the UK accessing European universities. The Erasmus scheme, with the changes due to Brexit, I believe the UK is no longer going to be participating in the Erasmus scheme. However, there is an alternative scheme that I believe is called the Turing scheme that is going to come into action as a replacement for it. So you may have heard the words Erasmus and stuff kind of thrown around, and you may be worried that, you know, that might stop things like studying abroad, but as far as we know, there is going to be a replacement scheme in the form of what's called the Turing scheme, and so that is what we mean when we say international exchange. At Royal Holloway, you can have the option, depending on your degree, that is, to study abroad in two different ways. The first way is to study abroad for your second year of university. So that would be something that you would apply for at the end or in the middle of your first year, and you would take your entire second year away. Or you would study in your third year abroad. And now I've put third year in quotation marks because this is the year that is between your second and third year of university study. So it's your third year, and then you would return to university for a fourth year, therefore turning your degree into a 4-year degree. And then you have two options of how you would like to do that. If you choose to do a third year choice at Royal Holloway, you can either go through an international year pathway, or you can go through a placement year pathway. And we're going to look into what those mean specifically. So as I've said, international summer schools are options, as well as more general international exchanges. And here's an example of some of the countries that we have partner universities with at Royal Holloway. It's very common for universities in the UK to be partnered with other universities across the world, and this is normally how studying abroad would work. You would go to a partner institution. It's not necessarily the case of just picking a university that you like the sound of and going there. It would be someone that already has links with us as a university, and we are able to see the degrees that they offer and make sure that the stuff that you're going to be studying when you're there is appropriate for the degree that you are studying. As I said, one option is going in your second year. Students at Royal Holloway in most departments can apply to study for their second year abroad. There is a list of exceptions, it's all on our website, but it's not applicable to some courses, and you'll see why. It's mostly the courses that offer the alternative option, so the alternative option to do it as a third year, that won't offer you the chance to do it for your second year. And if you take this option, the marks that you obtain at your partner university, so wherever you go, you will be assessed on. So the grades will count towards your degree, they'll be converted and transferred into your student record, then you will come back and finish your third year as normal at Royal Holloway. So there's a link here, and I will post the whole link into the chat later about the transfer guidelines of how the university grades in each country will transfer back into Royal Holloway grades. If we look at the third year option, so from the following departments, students at Royal Holloway can apply to do have their third year as an international year pathway, and most of these won't offer you the chance to go in your second year, so the international year pathway is a different opportunity. Again, the marks that you obtained at your university will be transferred onto your Royal Holloway record, but the thing that's different about this is that you will take this third year out to add an international year, and then you will come back for your final year at Royal Holloway. So this is a different way of doing it, and a way your degree, for example, if you're taking an English degree, your degree will be converted to not just being a BA in English, but to be a BA in English with an international year. And then finally, the third option for the third year, or the second option for the third year choice for studying abroad at Royal Holloway, is by taking a placement year pathway. Again, this is taking your third year out. So between your second and your final year, you would study abroad. The unique thing about this situation at Royal Holloway is that you don't have to be studying abroad for the entire time. You could mix and match it with something like a work placement or volunteering project. It needs to be made up of at least 3 months of each of these. If you were going to do all three, it would have to be 3 months of each. If you were going to do only two, it would have to be 6 months and 3 months. So I think it's a minimum of 9 months overall, but you can combine different pathways for that entire optional placement year. Or you could use that entire year. You could take 12 months or 9 months to study abroad, or to do just a work placement or just a volunteering project. So hopefully those options kind of make sense for you in terms of the potential choices for you to actually go and study abroad if you were a student at Royal Holloway. As I've said, other universities will have different systems in place, but they will usually be very similar. They will usually offer you a chance to take your third year out and convert your degree to a 4-year degree, or they will offer you a chance to take your second year out. And most of these options will mean that the marks that you get on your university abroad, wherever it is, will be taken into account and will count towards your degree. A question that a lot of students may think about and ask kind of immediately is, am I guaranteed to, study abroad at the country or the university that I want? As I've said, it doesn't really work in the way you may imagine, where you can just decide, oh, I want to study at this particular university, and therefore I'm going to just immediately apply. Different departments and different academic disciplines will have partnerships with universities across the world, and you will be able to study only at the partner universities that have been approved by your particular degree course. This is just so that you're learning stuff that is actually genuinely connected to the subject that you're taking, and that you'll get your final degree in. Another thing that you need to pay attention to about studying abroad is that it is a competitive process. You do have to apply, so it's not guaranteed that you'll get a place. In general, universities are looking for students that can demonstrate their academic achievement, so your grades will be taken into consideration when you apply for this. Your cultural interests, so are you going to, are you genuinely interested in the country that you're going to? And of course, your ability to be ambassador for the university when you are on your year abroad. So, of course, universities will talk you through the specific process that you need to do to apply. We'll hear hopefully today from some students that have gone through that experience. And, it's not necessarily going to be really, really daunting or scary, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that it is a competitive kind of procedure, and the universities will, be looking for students that can demonstrate all of these things. That's both the university, such as Royal Holloway, and then the international university as well. So before we move on to talking about year in industry, I just wanted to highlight some of the great benefits that a year abroad, or that studying abroad, can give to you. Of course, it's a great chance to overall enhance your knowledge of the subject, because you'll be learning something that is, related to your degree, and it will be about your subject, but it will be from a very different perspective. You may be able to kind of expand your knowledge on, topics that just teachers in this country aren't necessarily experts on. You may be able to get other perspectives, other points of view from other cultures. So definitely a great way to kind of connect with your subject in a different way. Of course, a chance to develop all those skills about, being multicultural, living in a new country, learning to adapt, learning to be resilient, and kind of just experiencing some really probably once in a lifetime experiences that will develop some really useful skills for the future. And of course, that's going to look great when you're applying for jobs as well. Widening your network of friends and future contacts. Obviously, a lot of people go on their year abroad and, you know, say that they met their best friends or their friends for life. It puts you in quite a unique situation where, you know, you are you're meeting with people that you are in a similar position with, kind of plunked in a new situation, and you can bond with them really quickly. And so I think that, you know, it's a great opportunity to make friends, and as well as making friends, to make contacts in your particular field of study, to meet new teachers, meet new academics who are knowledgeable on the subject. And yeah, so it's a great way to kind of get that network. And then, of course, all of the new skills that we've mentioned and meeting new people and kind of, you know, making the jump from one country to another is definitely a great way to boost your confidence, and to really, you know, start to level up on your life experiences, and to, you know, feel as though you can conquer anything, if you can conquer your year abroad. So moving on to the other kind of half of the content of today, about your year in industry. So what is a year in industry? You may have heard it being referred to as a placement year, an industrial placement, or a sandwich placement. This, much like the one of the options for study abroad that we were mentioning, takes place between your second and third year of your university degree, which would therefore mean that your university degree would extend to being 4 years long. Usually your degree would have a title in it that says, for example, sociology with year in industry, or management with year in business. So it would be clearly displayed on your degree transcript that you had done this. Some subjects on UCAS, some courses will have compulsory year in industries. In a similar way, I didn't mention this for year abroad, but some university courses may have compulsory study abroad, and that is usually language courses that will, you know, they will basically require you to be able to spend some time in a country that speaks the language that you're studying. Same way to that, some university courses may have compulsory year in industries, or they may be optional. The placement year option that I mentioned earlier, where you can mix and match studying abroad, a university work placement, and volunteering, is an optional year. Anyone studying any undergraduate degree at Royal Holloway can take part in it, but it's not compulsory. So it isn't necessarily the, you know, you don't have to pick it when you sign up via UCAS. You don't have to commit to it until you feel as though you're ready to commit to making that decision to take one. Your year in industry can be up to 12 months. They may be around, you know, 9 to 10 months. That's kind of the average, or it may be a full 12 months. It could start, for example, right after your university term ends, which could be in June after your second year, and it could finish, you know, in June after your whole year. So then you'll, you know, have a little bit of a break before you return for your final year at university. Something to note is that not every university or course offers the chance to do a year in industry, or are set up to allow you to do them. So make sure that you check when you are picking the university that you'd like to apply for, if it's an option and if it's going to be flexible enough for you to choose to do it or to not do it. A quick note that years in industry should be paid. It should be a paid placement unless it's a mandatory part of your course. So there are some probably shorter industry placements, like for example for medical students, that are mandatory parts of their courses that do not need to be paid. If your placement is for a registered charity, or if it's classed as shadowing, which you normally wouldn't do shadowing for that long, then you do not have to be paid. But anything other than that, then you are required to be paid. Some examples here of the types of things that you can do on a placement year, you know, looking at some just examples that are on job sites of industrial placements. Some facts about a year in industry. The average salary in 2020 for undergraduate students on their placement was £18,361. Relatively speaking, I think that's a really good average salary, considering that, you know, most students will not have as much of a living expense as compared to if you were a graduate, because some students can go back to living at home, some students can remain living in university towns, and also you are still eligible for your maintenance loan. as a student on your industrial placement. It just depends on your salary. So hopefully that kind of salary there that you would get for your year in industry would actually go a long way. And you may be wondering, does this kind of guarantee me a job? Do I do this placement and then I definitely get hired again? 59% of graduates hired by top undergraduate employers, and that is by a specific website that has rated those, hired graduates that were former interns or placement students. So it's definitely common for people to hire their placement students back once they graduate university. Some examples here from our business and management school, some students that have gone on to do placement years. This one is Priya. She did a marketing placement at L'Oreal, and then Louis, he did a supply chain analyst placement at Vauxhall. So again, there are absolutely hundreds of different placements out there, and there's examples of lots of different things that you can get involved in and do. I've just picked these two as, you know, some kind of specific examples that you can see the types of things you might be able to do. Their placement schemes are usually run by larger companies because what they'll do is they'll have a particular role that every year is filled by a placement student. And so that's why you often see students doing them at quite bigger, well-known companies. Overall, getting your placement is down to you. So in the similar way to your studying abroad options, getting a work placement is dependent on your ability to get one. So you will be asked to apply to places directly. Your university may have contacts and examples and you know, leads that they can provide you with, but generally it is the overall responsibility will be up to you. However, they can provide you with tons of support. There's loads of great websites out there that are able to help you through the kind of time to find your placement. The question that I often get is about university studies. What does that mean? You'll still have to pay tuition fees for your placement year, but it may be reduced. It's usually reduced. And the reason that is because universities will often send tutors to visit you, do placement visits, and kind of, you know, assess how everything's going. You'll also have assessments to do. You'll usually be asked to complete reflection essays and attend a callback day where you come back and hear about your experience on placement. So as much as most of your focus is working day to day in your company for that year, you will also have a little bit of university related work to do, just so that you can keep in touch with your degree. A question that I often get asked here is, does your placement have to be related to your degree? The answer generally to that is no. It doesn't have to be directly related. There is usually a way that you can relate your degree to your placement year, no matter what it is, whether that involves skills or knowledge. So don't think that if you've chosen a particular degree, for example, say you've chosen an English degree and you really want to do a placement in marketing, that doesn't mean you don't have to be a marketing student to do a marketing placement. It's totally fine to kind of use the skills that you've gained in an English degree to go and do a year in working in marketing. And just like I did with a year abroad, some benefits of a year in industry, getting an insight into an industry. Now, this is a really big one. It's not just about finding an industry that you really like, working in it, and then coming out of it and thinking, right, that's it, I'm going to be set for that for the rest of my life. It can actually be the opposite. It's the chance to get an insight into an industry and learn whether or not you like it. If you are committed to a particular career, for example, in a field like law, rather than spending your entire university career building up to working in it and working really hard to get a job, and then as soon as you get a graduate job, within 3 months you decide that you don't like it, you can do a year in industry and try that industry out before you graduate, so that you get that experience, you understand what it's like in that environment, and you know, can understand what it is that you do or don't like about that particular industry. Same with studying abroad. It's a really great chance to get connections. I personally did a year in industry. It was quite a while ago now, but I'm still connected and still in touch with people that I worked with back in 2015. And so I know that in the future they're going to be, you know, always in touch with me and always kind of checking in on how I'm doing, which is fantastic for somebody that's starting out, you know, as kind of a young professional in the workforce. Really, really useful. Probably the main one that you might think of is to be able to get experience to put on your CV. If you are up against students that have studied the exact same degree as you, but you have 1 year experience already in the industry that you're applying for, then it's kind of a no-brainer. You already have that work experience, and that is really, really valuable to employers. And as well as that, it's also all of the skills, the chance to experience what office life is like, the chance to understand, the corporate jargon, the chance to understand, how programs like Excel and Microsoft Office Suite are used in an office. These are just some really, really like generic examples, but those transferable skills that you may not be able to actually learn from studying your academics can be really, really useful for the future. Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to close my presentation down now, and we've got the rest of the time to speak to our student ambassadors. So if you just bear with me, and we will get everyone up on webcam, and then I'm going to ask them all to introduce themselves. Fantastic, everyone just popped up at once for me. Okay, great. So let's have George. Do you want to introduce yourself first? Just tell us a little bit about what you study and what you do, so how you're related to this particular topic. Just bear with me 1 second. I have to unmute you, but it's taking its time.
Okay, so I'm George. I study electronic engineering at Royal Holloway, and I will be doing the year in industry next year. I haven't started it yet. Well, I say next year. It starts in August. No,
Fantastic.
July.
Giving yourself a bit of extra holiday there.
Yeah.
Okay, Bryony. Okay, I've unmuted you, but I think you might also have to unmute yourself.
Oh, brilliant. Hi, I'm Bryony. I'm a 4th year French and Spanish student. So that means last year I did my year abroad, and I split that half and half, between working and studying in 2 different countries. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. And then James.
Hello, sorry. So I'm James. I'm a 4th year geographer, and I spent last year in Sydney University in Australia.
Great. So we've definitely got a variety of experiences here. So we had some pre-submitted questions from students that before they joined the session. So I'm going to probably start with one of those, and then everybody, you've got full access to the chat. So if you have any questions at all about anything we've spoken about, anything specific for our student ambassadors, then please just post it in the chat and we'll read it out. Okay, so I will start with obviously, some of them are more industry specific, and some of them are more about year abroad. So I want to make sure that I get one that all of you can apply for. Okay. So let's go. Why did you just decide, or why did you choose to do either your placement or your year abroad? Maybe we'll start with James.
Yeah, okay. Well, I actually decided, I don't usually give in to peer pressure, but my mate was actually doing it too. And I thought, oh, it'll really suck if he goes away and then I'm alone in 3rd year. So I thought, I'll go for this. And yeah, it was the best decision I've ever made. Made it on a whim, just on a night out. We said, yeah, let's do it. And we both applied, and it was cool because I got to experience like applying for something alongside someone. So we were there together. We were kind of going through the same motions. And he also ended up going to Australia, but he was in Brisbane, and we live together now in 4th year, so it's quite funny. Yeah.
That's great.
I guess that's why we decided, yeah.
That is definitely one of the most unique reasons to apply for a year abroad, but it shows that the inspiration can come from anywhere. How about you, Bryony?
Yeah, so as I said, I'm a language student, so it was actually part of my degree. So I do French and Spanish with a placement year. So it wasn't really a decision chosen by me, but I really wanted to do one, and that was kind of one of the reasons that I chose the degree I chose. So as I said, I split my year half and half. So for the first 4.5 months, I worked as an English teacher in a French-speaking island which is like just off the coast of Madagascar. It's called Reunion Island. So I lived in a tropical island for 4.5 months, and if that doesn't convince you, I don't know what will. And then for the other half, I did a study placement in Malaga in the south of Spain. But yeah, and I kind of, although it wasn't my choice to do a year abroad, I definitely wanted to, because I knew that it was going to be a really great experience to experience new cultures, immerse myself in my languages that I really love, and also like gain so many skills and meet loads of people, which is one of the best takeaways from the year.
Fantastic. And what about you, George?
So for me, it was very much a case of I wanted to get industry experience, because I figure while I can learn all the foundations and everything at uni, there's only so far you can go with that. And it would be nice to have some industry experience, knowing what it's like to work in an actual work environment before I'm kind of released into the real world away from uni.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I can speak from my own personal experience. When I did my year in industry, I was like, I think it made the actual graduate job hunt so much easier, because I knew, first of all, I knew what looking for a job was like, but I also knew what it was that I wanted out of a workplace and things like that. So hopefully you'll have the same experience, George, when you get to that point. But yeah, I had similar reasons for doing mine. Okay, so I've had some questions in the chat. This one will probably be for Bryony and James, because you've already completed it. What was the highlight of your year abroad? I'll start with James.
Yeah, so I think for me, it had to be discovering that magpies in Australia are actually not friendly like the magpies here, and regularly seeing people getting attacked by them on their way to lectures. So just the cultural differences were so fun to see. And just being in a totally different environment, I'd say, was the highlight. So it's kind of like, I'm kind of cheating here, but like every day was a highlight, because you just notice something so different. Like McDonald's in Australia does halloumi wraps. Like, what is that? Like it was like in the Starbucks. Like it was totally different. So, and all day breakfast too. So that was tidy.
That is a great observation.
Yeah, sort of in a similar way, it was the overall experience is just everything is so new. Because I split mine into two, I was able to see my progress, like myself, within a couple of months. So when I went to Reunion Island first, I remember the first day I arrived there. It was a 12-hour flight from Paris, and I left my family, and then I got off the plane and I was like, what have I done? And I was so upset and I was so nervous. But then when I went to Spain, even though it was closer to home, sure, the whole experience was new again, and I saw how I handled it so much better second time round. So for me, one of the highlights kind of for personal growth was seeing how much I'd been able to just improve in like my life skills within such a short time frame. And you have so many experiences that you come up against, and difficulties that you come up against over the course of the year, and you don't even realize how much you're learning almost. So that's definitely one of the highlights for me. I did also then swim with wild dolphins in Mauritius, so that can't be left off.
Is that better than halloumi wraps? I'm not sure. And then George, what are you most excited for about your year in industry?
Oh, that's a tough one. Because I'm really excited just generally to be working with new people, with people who have so much experience and know what they're doing, who haven't just been kind of in academia for so long. Because I find talking to lecturers is fine and all, but they've been in academia for so long that they are so into their research rather than products that companies are making. So I'm really looking forward to just be working on real products that a company is making.
And what is it that you're going to be doing on your year in industry? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so I only know so much, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's largely working on microcontrollers, so fault finding, schematic capture, kind of a lot of engineering. So unless kind of you are an engineer, I wouldn't necessarily expect anyone to know, but certainly circuit layout, circuit development, and testing.
Fantastic. I sort of understood most of that. So linked, we had a pre-submitted question that I think I've probably already answered, but I will just go through it again. And the question was, does your placement have to be related to your degree? So obviously in George's case, it is quite directly related, but it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly along the lines of the subject that you're studying. For example, you could be a history student. That doesn't mean that you have to do your placement in a museum or you know, in stuff that is directly related to history. You can work in a business, you can work in a whole variety of roles. Obviously some placements like engineering placements or some computer science placements are going to require very specific knowledge, but there's a lot out there that are happy to accept students that have got transferable skills that they can prove they can use in a business environment. So my own experience, I have a degree in sociology and I worked in HR for my placement year. I worked in recruitment, and you know, I didn't have a human resources degree or a management degree, but I kind of managed to, you know, convince them, I guess, that my sociology, the degree and the skills that I had learned in my time so far as a sociology student would come in handy kind of in this particular placement. So yeah, you definitely don't have to restrict yourself to only the things you think are directly related, although of course there are some placements that you're going to need really specific knowledge for. And you know, if you kind of wanted to work in engineering, then I'm guessing you'd probably be doing an engineering degree in the first place, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue. So staying with placements just for a little bit, George, how long did it take you to find your placement, and what was the process of applying like?
So I was quite lucky. I basically had my placement confirmed by January. I'd applied in November, I think, maybe. So I'd applied in November, interviewed, I think, start of December, and had heard back from them end of December and confirmed the placement early January. So I was quite lucky with that. The company I'll be working with was very efficient and fast. Certain other companies that I applied for were certainly not as fast. Some took days, some took weeks, some took literal months to get back to me. So it really depends. And I think I also did just get lucky, honestly.
Yeah, I totally reiterate that as well from my own experience. Every company does it differently. Every company has different stages of applications. Some they might ask you to do, you know, online assessments and things like that at the very first stage, and then you're either in or you're out if you get through that. Others, it might be much more simple and you might just have an interview after you've sent in an application. Others, you might have assessment days or assessment centres where you go with other students, and but try not to worry too much about that level of detail at this point, because when you know the career services at your university will be able to give you advice on the steps in those application processes when it gets down to it. And as I've said, for me personally, having that experience while looking for my placement really helped me when it came to looking for a graduate job at the end. So I'm grateful that I got that experience of, you know, applying to so many opportunities and kind of going through those processes. I don't know if hopefully you'll feel the same at some point. Okay, so for the year abroad people, so Bryony, let's go through you first. So did you get homesick while you were abroad? I know you mentioned you had like a bit of a wobble when you first when you first got there, which is probably totally natural. And how did you manage it?
Yeah, so obviously being homesick is something that you kind of face throughout university. Like coming into my first year, that was the first time I'd been away from home for an extended period of time. So you kind of, it's a kind of another step from that. Yes, I did get homesick, but we live in the wonderful world of technology, and being able to call my family when I could, and just stay in contact them as much as possible was really amazing. The most difficult thing I found was when I was in Reunion Island. It was like a 3-hour time difference, which isn't 3 to 4 hours, which isn't too much, but it kind of does make a difference. I didn't realize how much of a difference that would make. But really, the main thing was that when I was abroad, I met like-minded people, and they were in the same situation as, or similar situations as I was. So I was able to find people to talk to about the same sort of feelings, and we were able to kind of comfort each other in moments. And there was honestly so much going on that there wasn't almost enough time to have those real deep moments of homesickness. And before I knew it, I was back home for Christmas. So if that is something that really worries you, you know, consider somewhere slightly closer to home that you can access, but also just know that there will be people who will be in the same situation as you, and it will fly by, and it really did for me.
How about you, James?
I think like Bronnie said, like, you know, with technology, it's much easier to stay in contact with people. I think the hardest thing I found though was I would phone like my parents at like 5 p.m. for me, but they'd be just waking up and it'd be really early for them. That was also a struggle when I came home and I had to do seminars at like 4 a.m. Because of the COVID. So that was quite funny. But yeah, the time difference can sometimes make you a bit homesick. But I think, yeah, you do meet people like Bronnie was saying, and you keep so busy. I actually found myself comforting other people that I made friends with who were homesick, so it kind of distracted me from getting homesick in a way. So that might happen to you too.
That's kind of related to a pre-submitted question that we had that asked, like, did you manage to make friends? It sounds like you both managed to make quite a few friends while you were over there. And the friends that you made, were they other people from the UK, or were they from kind of all over? I guess, James, you could answer first.
Yeah, so I made friends from, like, there was obviously quite a few from the UK, because the way Sydney University does it is all the international students kind of choose between, I think Royal Holloway does this too on their end, like they choose between certain accommodations. So I made loads of friends from the UK, a lot from the University of Exeter for some reason. But also I made friends from Lebanon, from America, from Japan. I met someone whose parents were from North Korea, so that was quite interesting. Like I met like a lot of people from different areas. But you'll find as well that you'll make friends with people who are there. Obviously, so I made friends with a lot of Australian people. I did a theatre class, even though I do geography, and we got to do a lot of like performance stuff with them. So that was quite cool, and we bonded over that.
Yeah, I would completely agree. It is. I did find myself gravitating towards British people just because you come from a similar place and you're in a similar situation. But I did make friends with people all over the world, from all over the world, doing other Erasmus placements, and then local people as well. You do surprise yourself with the amount of people that you do end up meeting and having these sometimes strange, sometimes great experiences with. Just as a little funny anecdote, I ended up living with a 77-year-old Creole woman for a month, and that was an experience in itself. So it is you meet a lot of people, and I'm sure you'll find people that you can relate to and enjoy your time with.
Brilliant. Yeah, definitely lots of diversity there in the people that you've been meeting. Okay, let me have a look at the chat. Again, guys, please feel free to send in any more questions that you have. I've got through most of them now. We still have a little bit more time. Another one for George, actually, about your placement. So did you apply for your placement yourself, or was it through the university's career service?
So I applied for it myself, but but it was through a scholarship scheme that the uni is part of. So the engineering department is part of a scholarship scheme called UK Electronic Skills Foundation, who basically team up with a whole load of companies to offer both a bursary and a year's placement. So I applied through that, but I did the application myself. I did run it by my department's director of industry, who works closely with the Career Centre at Holloway. But overall, yes, it was my application. I didn't do it through the university's Career Centre.
And just to kind of note, most career services at most universities won't necessarily have like a book of placements or a pre-decided bank of placements that they can sort of pass out. Most students will have to apply directly through the companies themselves. However, the career services can offer with, you know, ways of finding leads, you know, useful websites, useful research techniques, and then they can support you through your application. So it's probably more rare that students would go like through the career service, if that sort of makes sense.
The Career Centre does also have a lot of useful resources for applications, for cover letters, for finding companies, all of the above. Like they can help you find the placements, but you can't usually apply through them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's usually the case at most universities that I have heard about that run placement schemes. It's very similar situations. Okay, let's have a look. I've got a few questions in here. Oh, so George, I'm sorry, you might not be able to answer this one, but for Bryony and for James, was it easier or harder than your other university years? James, you want to go first?
I'll be honest with you, it was quite easy. Like going from second year geography to like the way they do things in Sydney as well is very different, shall we say, academically. It's like deadlines are more of a construct. So they'll be like, you know, like try and give it in this date, but you know, text me if you can't. So you text your personal tutor, like, can I have an extra day? So yeah, it was one of the easier years I've had. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah,
Totally fair enough.
yeah. So I, as I said, did work for half of it, and that was completely different. So I couldn't really say if that was harder or easier. It was just very different. For the studying in Spain, one thing that is kind of notorious, Spain is notorious for, is its bad admin, university admin. So in terms of applying and things, it was a little bit long-winded. But for my university that I was at, it was, you could choose different year courses. So you might be able to enter into first year, you might be able to enter into final fourth year. And then also with it being Spain, there were some courses in English, some courses in Spanish. So in some ways, I think I did one course in English, but I did my other courses in Spanish. So even though I was still learning in my language that I was learning, well, you know, my Spanish degree, it was hard because it was constant, you know, topics in that language. So for me, the learning bit was slightly harder, but it's definitely still manageable.
Two quite different experiences there. Yeah, of course, when you add the other language in, I think it definitely is probably going to make it harder, but fantastic experience for your Spanish.
Just to kind of like counteract myself, if you are thinking of doing a placement year in the university and you want to go to Spain but you don't speak Spanish, don't be discouraged by the fact that you can't speak Spanish, for example, because the universities do like introductory language courses, and as I said, there's lots of courses in English. So if you really love a country or a particular city somewhere and you don't speak the language, don't let that deter you from having a look into the options, because some of them really are great and you'll get the language as a bonus as well.
Yeah, definitely. And if you are studying any course other than a language course, then you will be taught in English wherever you go. That's kind of one of the requirements for us, validating your year abroad. We're not going to send you somewhere where you'll be exclusively taught in a language you don't speak. So yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're sort of coming to the end of our time here. Please feel free to kind of pop in any more questions that you guys have in the chat. So again, for our study abroad guys, how did the university support you while you were abroad? Brian, you might as well start with you.
Yeah, so I have my personal tutor that I've had throughout my time at uni, and they constantly just were double checking in on me every now and then. And I did have some Royal Holloway assessments to do, not that many. So it was nice to hear back from the uni occasionally to say, how are things going? And I knew that I could always count on my personal tutor to answer my questions when I needed the help. There's also, for me, I had year abroad coordinator for my department. So I was able to talk to them specifically about questions pertaining to like anything, any difficulties that I was having that was quite specific. So basically the support is there for when you need it, which was really, really helpful in some tricky situations that I came up against.
Great. What about you, James?
Yeah, just about the same for me as well. So I had my personal tutor, my dissertation advisor as well, kept up to date with me just in case my ideas changed. CDAS as well, which is obviously quite specific to Royal Holloway, but I'm guessing most universities have a similar team. Particularly the study abroad team were always in contact. I think they sent like a monthly circulation just asking us how we were, encouraged us to send photos, so it was quite nice to have that line of contact. And I think I wanted to change my course selection a couple of times. I was really indecisive about my second term. I think I changed the courses about 3 times, but my personal tutor was able to just change my study plan. So just got that registered and got me enrolled. So that was quite helpful too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's nice to hear that those are the type of things you might not think about when you're first thinking about maybe going on a year abroad, but to know that someone from the university will probably be in touch with you and checking in, and it's nice that you have a little bit of a connection to home still. Okay, I had a question that was for George. Okay, so this might be a bit trickier for you to answer, but you can talk about what your experience has been like so far, or if you've heard or if you've spoken to other students that have done placements and stuff. But from your point of view, would you recommend doing a placement year, and do you think it's very common for students to do one?
So yeah, it is tricky so far to comment because obviously I haven't really started. But so far, my experience communicating with the company has been good, all been very clear, with a lot of back and forth between myself, HR, as well as the people in my own department. And also, for one nice thing that applying through UKASF had was that they assign you a buddy, as it were, so someone who has done a placement through UKASF at that company, hopefully in the same department, but not necessarily in a previous year. So I've communicated with 2 previous interns at the company, as well as the current interns for this year. They put us all in contact with each other so we could kind of get to know each other beforehand if we wanted to. So that was really good. That was a really good thing that this company did. Overall, it's been a pleasant experience. Although I will say it won't necessarily be for everyone, just because all companies are different. And also you might have a little less luck getting a placement, and you might be working hard on your degree and on interviews from September to now, even so yeah.
Yeah, so it can take a considerable amount of effort in your second year to secure your placement, so that's just something to keep in mind. Of course, most universities will have a policy that if you haven't arranged your placement by a certain time, then you'll just move on to your final year as your third year. So they're not going to sort of penalise you. It's not going to be something that you have failed. It will normally just be that you just move on to your final year. I know that was the case for myself. I had friends that didn't do a placement and I did. And so then when I went back, they were already graduated, and then we were with some students that were from the year below us that had chosen not to do placements as well. So whatever your kind of choices, however you get on with your applications, it should be you should be able to keep going with your final year no matter what. Okay, great. So final question before we end, guys. What tips do you have for students that are maybe thinking about doing a year abroad or a year in industry? George, let's start with you first for a year in industry.
So my number one is honestly be persistent. Keep applying and applying and applying for jobs, even if you've applied for loads and they've all rejected you. Try not to get disheartened, because a lot of jobs are very competitive and there are a lot of students all over the country applying for the same jobs as you. If one interview goes badly, just try not to worry about it too much. There'll always be another one. I've got friends who have been applying all year and are still interviewing because they want their year in industry. Be persistent, and also research the company before your interview, and if you can, have notes with you so you can always just really quickly look at something before the interview or during the interview if you can.
Always a good tip when it comes to interviewing for anywhere, definitely. How about you, Bryony?
That's a really good piece of advice. When I was applying for my job, there was a specific place I wanted to work at, and I initially contacted that office directly and they said no, and then I went back to someone else and then got in through the back door and ended up going through it. So being persistent and being confident in your skills and what you can bring to the company if you're applying for a job, that is really important. And I think generally, if in terms of deciding whether or not to do one, I think if you've not had a chance to be out of any education, if you haven't really had a chance to do a job or had a chance to be away from home very much, I would really consider it, because it really gives you so many life skills outside of your work or your study within the year. The actual all-rounded kind of education you get from the year is so invaluable. And as I'm graduating in a month or so actually, I know that I'm going to go into the big world with a lot more sort of knowledge and kind of awareness of what it's like to be out in the big world. So that's something that is a real benefit from it, and I would recommend it to anyone.
Fantastic. James?
I would say, at least from a year abroad perspective as well, depending on where you plan to go, maybe save some money, because some places can be a little bit more expensive and people do get that culture shock. Like in Sydney, for example, first starts, like the way everything converts, it's like $12 is £6, but a pint is about $14 in Sydney, so that's about £7 for a pint in Sydney. Everything's a bit more expensive, not that much, but you'll know it's kind of like London prices, but a little bit extra, or like services, motorway services prices for everything. So yeah, get used to that. Maybe save a bit of money. It's always smart, just in case of, I mean, you'll be fine, but just in case, you want to do some extra stuff. Like, I knew people who went to New Zealand, they sort of backpacked around New Zealand as well. So you may want to do extra stuff on your year abroad. So maybe have a plan, know what you want to do, and budget accordingly, just like university, really.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, student ambassadors. It's been really, really great to hear your experiences, and I'm sure all of our students have really appreciated it. Thank you, students, for joining. If you do want to access a recording of the session today, please just email us. I'm just typing our email address in the chat now. And we'll be able to send it over to you. It might not be ready immediately, but it will be ready at some point in case you want to watch back and remind yourself of what our student ambassadors have said. Other than that, just a big thank you again from me for everybody for coming. And if you wouldn't mind, when you close the session, you will be presented with an evaluation form. If you could just fill that out, it shouldn't take more than 2 minutes, that would be fantastic. So we can continue to, provide useful session for you guys. Okay, have a lovely evening, everybody. Thank you very much. Goodbye.